The Last FIREHAWK, The Whispering Oak. By Katrina Charman. Introduction. In the enchanted land of Peridea lies Valor Wood, a forest filled with magic and light. There, a wise owl named Grey leads the Owls of Valor. These brave warriors protect the creatures of the wood. But a darkness is spreading across Peridea, and the forest's magic and light are fading away. A powerful old vulture called Thorn controls the shadowy dark magic. Whenever the shadow appears, Thorn and his army of orange-eyed spies are nearby. Thorn will not stop until Peridea is destroyed. Tag, a small barn owl, and his friends Skyla and Blaze, the last FIREHAWK, have found 2 pieces of the magical Ember Stone. This stone may be strong enough to stop Thorn once and for all. But there are more pieces to be found. Thorn and his spies are also searching for the stone and for Blaze. The friends' journey continues. Peridea. Chapter 1, The Shifting Sands. Tag pulled the magical map from his sack. He looked at a glowing spot on the paper. We need to head west, Tag told his friends Skyla and Blaze. The next piece of the Ember Stone should be at a place called the Whispering Oak. Blaze peeped. We have to move fast to stay ahead of Thorn and his shadow, Skyla said, looking to the sky for the shadow's dark cloud. The sun was slowly rising above the trees. Blaze leaned over Skyla's shoulder to look at the map. Shifting sands, she said. We have to cross that? Skyla asked, pointing to a large sandy desert. Tag nodded. Grey once told me that the shifting sands are full of swirling sand tornadoes. Skyla shivered. We're going to have to be really careful, she warned as Tag put the map away. The 3 friends set off. Tag and Blaze flew overhead while Skyla raced through the trees below, zipping up and over branches in a blur of gray fur. The farther west they traveled, the warmer it became. Phew! Skyla said as they rested by a small stream. It's getting hot. Tag's feathers ruffled in the warm breeze. It's getting windy, too, he said. Blaze pointed her wing ahead. Shifting sands, she said. Tag flew above the trees and saw that Blaze was right. The trees thinned out and beyond that, as far as Tag could see, was the desert. Blaze peeped at Skyla, turning so Skyla could climb onto her back. Great idea, Blaze, Skyla said as she climbed on. Yes, Tag agreed. We can move way faster if we all fly. They took off, soaring over the trees toward the sandy desert. The closer they got to the desert, the stronger the wind blew. Suddenly, Tag was blown out of the sky, onto the soft sand at the edge of the desert. Blaze and Skyla landed beside him. The wind is too strong. Tag yelled, spitting sand from his beak. We'll have to walk through the sandstorm. The wind blew stronger still. The strips of cloth flew from their faces, and the sand shifted beneath Tag's feet. All of a sudden, the sand began to move across the desert like waves. Up and down. Higher and higher. Tag dragged his feet across the desert, pushing against the wind and sand. Skyla and Blaze followed. The wind whirled around them, sending sand flying into their eyes and beaks. Tag used the dagger that Grey had given him to cut 3 strips from the top of his sack. He tied one over his beak to keep the sand out. He handed the other 2 to his friends, who did the same. Tag glanced up just in time to see a huge swirl of sand heading right for them. Chapter 2, Tornado. Sand tornado! Tag cried. The swirling sand tornado was ripping a path across the desert as it moved closer. Tag reached for Skyla's paw, but a giant sand wave rose up, knocking Tag over. He started sinking beneath the sand as the wave pulled him farther away. Skyla! Blaze! Tag cried out. He tried to fly, but the wind was too strong. From the ground, all Tag could see was sand. Skyla jumped onto Blaze's back as a big gust of wind pushed them forward to land next to Tag. Tag grabbed hold of Blaze's tail, and Blaze pulled as hard as she could until Tag was free from the sand. "Are you okay?" Skyla shouted. Tag nodded. "Thanks for rescuing me." But Skyla did not answer. She stared at something behind him, her eyes wide. Blaze gave a loud warning, "Peep!" The sand tornado moved closer and closer. Skyla grabbed Tag's wing. "We have to find shelter," she cried. Tag shook his head. "There's no time," he replied, looking at his friends. "Blaze, you are the only one strong enough to fly out of the storm. You'll have to go on without us." Blaze stamped her feet. "No!" she cried. The sand tornado was almost upon them. Suddenly, Blaze raised her bright wings. Her feathers flapped in the wind, but she didn't fly away. Instead, she wrapped her wings around Tag and Skyla, making a cocoon. Then she ducked her head inside, bending low and digging her long talons deep into the sand. Tag could hear the roar of the tornado as it surrounded them. "The tornado is on top of us," he said, his feathers shaking. Skyla's tail flicked back and forth. "I'm scared," she yelled. Tag reached for Skyla's paw, and Blaze gave a little peep. The three friends clung to each other as tightly as they could, waiting for the tornado to blow them away. Chapter 3: A Magical Meadow. Slowly, the loud roar of the wind faded and the sand beneath their feet was still again. "Has the tornado passed?" Tag asked. Blaze lifted her head to look out across the desert. "Safe," she said, opening her wings. Tag blinked. He couldn't believe his eyes. The sky was clear and there was no sign that there had ever been a tornado. "Look!" Skyla gasped, pointing to a deep groove in the sand. The tornado had passed right over where they stood. Tag hooted in amazement. "I can't believe how strong your wings are, Blaze." Blaze smiled. "You saved us," Skyla told her, giving her a hug. "Super strong wings must be another of your magical FIREHAWK powers," Tag said to Blaze. "Just like your fire power and your cry." Skyla brushed sand out of her fur. "That was close." "Even with Blaze's powers," she said. Tag checked that their piece of the ember stone was safe. Ahead, he could see a wide green line on the horizon. He pointed to it. "Do you see that? We're near the end of the desert," Skyla cried. She raced across the sand. Tag and Blaze spread their wings and flew after her. As Tag neared the edge of the shifting sands, he could see the tops of lush green trees. "I hope there's water close by," Tag thought. He was thirsty after swallowing all that sand. Tag and Blaze soon landed in a meadow of fruit trees. Skyla stood near a pool filled by a small waterfall. All around them were hundreds of colorful flowers. Tag took a deep breath. The air smelled so fresh. "Where are we?" Skyla asked, picking a sparkly purple flower and tucking it beneath her armor. Tag looked at Gray's map, but there was no meadow. "I'm not sure. Maybe this is a magical place?" "It sure feels like it," Skyla said. Blaze nodded and dunked her face in the cool, sweet-tasting water. The friends ate pineapple and mango and papaya until their tummies were full. Then they filled their water pouches and gathered fruit for the journey ahead. Tag flew into the branches of a nearby tree. In the distance were two tall brown hills. "We're almost at the Whispering Oak," Tag called. "We should keep moving. Can't we stay just a little longer?" Skyla begged. Peep? Blaze agreed. Thorn or his spies might be close behind, Tag replied. We must go now. The friends walked to the edge of the meadow. The dark shadow of the hills crept closer, and Tag shivered as the air grew cold. Finally, they reached the foot of the two hills. The Whispering Oak is on the other side of these hills, Tag said. Chapter 4, Tunnel of Spies. We don't have to climb over these hills, do we? Skyla asked, looking up at the two huge, craggy hills. Fly? Blaze asked. There is a path through the middle of the hills, Tag said, pointing to a narrow tunnel. That way will be quicker. The three friends entered the tunnel between the hills. It was dark and cold. The tunnel was as wide as it was tall, and Blaze's head brushed the ceiling. Everything was dusty and brown. A few bushes and trees grew out of the rock-covered hillsides, but they were all dead or dying. It looks like the shadow has already been here, Skyla whispered, loading her slingshot. Skyla might be right, Tag thought, pulling out his dagger. I just hope Thorn hasn't already found the next piece of the Ember Stone. Skyla reached for her slingshot. Do we have any more acorns? She asked Tag. I'm running low. Tag felt inside his sack, then shook his head. I'm sure there will be more or at the Whispering Oak, he told her. Is our piece of the stone warm yet? Skyla asked. Tag checked their ember stone. The two pieces they had already found had joined together to make one stone. It still feels cool, he said. Keep checking it. The stone will get warmer when we're close to the next piece, Skyla replied. As Tag walked along, something drip, drip, dripped onto his head. Tag shivered and wiped his face with his wing. It's too dark, Skyla said. Blaze, can your wings light the way? Blaze gently flapped her wings up and down. One by one, her golden feathers lit up in flames to let out a soft glow. The light cast shadows